Hey everybody, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we are going to be discussing neutral pelvis and lumbopelvic stabilization. So I hope you've watched the first tutorial on breathing. If you haven't, watch that before going on to this one because some of those same principles are going to be applied to neutral pelvis and lumbopelvic stabilization. So let's start first with our neutral pelvis. Neutral pelvis means we have an even engagement of our abdominals and our core muscles in the front as in the back to help stabilize a neutral placement of our pelvis. Now that's going to mean a couple of different things in different exercises. So we're going to explore finding neutral lying on our back, lying on our belly, sitting, standing, and even lying on our side, right? Okay, so from here, let's actually start lying down onto your back here. Okay, so right here, we're gonna lie down with your knees bent, feet are flat on the mat and close towards your behind. So we're gonna start with a fundamental exercise called pelvic clock. Now, this is gonna involve a bit of mental imagery here, so stick with me. I want you to picture that your pelvis, your sacrum specifically, is sitting on top of a clock face here. Now, let's place your hand on top of your hips so you can follow that motion that we're going to be going to. So let's have you imagine that 6 o'clock is sitting underneath your tailbone. So I want you to arch your lower back and allow your pelvis to rock forward so that your tailbone is quite heavy on the mat and your lower back has lifted up completely off of the floor. So this is 6 o'clock here, and just tune into the pose. Do you feel how tight your back musculature is, right? You feel how loose it is in the abdomen in the front. All right, so that never good in any exercise. If you feel this much of a disconnect in any of your exercises, you need to regroup and find your neutral pelvis, which we're going to explore here. So again, this is a 6 o'clock. This is a lumbar extension here. Now, I want you to pelvic tuck. So you're tucking your tailbone between your legs and imprinting your lower back into the mat at 12 o'clock. Now pause holding this flat back position. Notice how tight your abdomen is and how lengthened out your lower back is. This is acceptable, actually. We do a lot of work in the imprinted spine here. So this is absolutely fine to feel. However, we're still not neutral because we're not balanced. So a neutral is going to be somewhere between the two, where you feel a tone to your lower abdominals and you feel a tone to your back musculature as well. So they're working together to hold your spine in place. So that is our lumbar stabilization, okay? So we'll take a few times rocking forward to 6 o'clock here, arching your back, and then pelvic tucking, using your abdomen to imprint your lower back into the mat. Again, inhale to arch, exhale, flatten your back. Good. Now come to that center of the clock. Okay, so now that was 12 and 6 o'clock. We're going to be going 3 to 9 o'clock. So let's just say, I always get these numbers mixed up, my apologies. Let's say 3 o'clock is your left hip, 9 o'clock is your right hip. We're going to roll the weight to 3 o'clock. So you just rotated your pelvis. Now rotate to 9 o'clock. You're rotating the other way. So this, try not to use your legs. As little movement of your legs as possible here. And just rock side to side. It's probably going to be very small before you feel those legs wanting to come in and take over. So we're just twisting and twisting side to side. Again, you're keeping a tone to your lower abs so you feel your obliques start to really kick in with this movement here. That's 3 and 9 o'clock, rotation of your pelvis. Now come back to the center of that clock face. We're going to be going in a circular motion around that clock. So let's begin first with your rolling to 6 o'clock here. So inhale, arch the lower back, shifting your weight towards 6 o'clock. Now let's have you roll to your left hip to 3 o'clock, then roll to your lower back to 12 o'clock, roll to the right hip to 9 o'clock, and then back to 6. And again, left hip, lower back, right hip, tailbone. Last time, lower back, right hip and tailbone. Pause. Let's reverse the direction. So right hip, lower back, left hip, tailbone. All right. Exhale. Lower back, left tip, tail. Last time around to the right, to the lower back, to the left hip, to your tailbone, and now come right in the center of that clock face. Very nice. So that was pelvic clock. And that's a cool foundational exercise because just by moving your pelvis in conjunction with the lower back and even down onto your femurs, moving your pelvic structure like that is really waking up some dormant muscles that might be, not pulling their weight, and loosening up tighter muscles that were kind of compensating for those dormant muscles. So it just kind of woken everybody up and brought everybody to the party to help find and stabilize our pelvis. So right here, another way to think about finding neutral pelvis from lying on our back, take your hands and place them on top of your pelvis. So you're gonna feel your two hip bones here, and you're gonna feel your pubic bone here underneath your fingertips. So you're gonna create a little arrow with your hands on top of your pelvis. Now, when you arch your back, your arrow has tilted down. You've rolled your hip bones higher than the pubic bone, right? Now, when you pelvic tuck or go to flat back, you're tilting your arrow up. So your pubic bone is sitting higher than your hip bones. Neutral is going to be parallel with each other. So your arrow is totally flat and parallel to the floor. So that is neutral from lying on your backside. We utilize this all the time. You'll hear me cue you to find your neutral alignment all the time, and this is what I'm referring to, all right? So we're going to take that and apply it to lying on our belly. So let's have you turn over and lie down on your belly now. I personally think this is the easiest position to find neutral because you have the feedback of your body laying on the floor here. So the concept is the exact same as lying on your back, right? So bring your forehead down. I'm going to keep my forehead off of the floor just a little bit because of my microphone, but your forehead should stay down onto the mat. Now, I want you to take your hands, again, place them underneath your pelvis, same position here. So you feel your left hip bone, you feel your right hip bone, and hopefully you feel your pelvic pubic bone pressing down as well. So we're trying to find even weight, even pressure on top of your hands from your hips, from your pelvis. Now, I want you to notice, is your abdomen toned underneath your fingers? Or is it kind of relaxed and just kind of sagging into the floor? So I want you to pull that belly button tight to the spine, engage those lower abdominals, and tone up on your pelvic floor. So you're pulling your pelvic floor up towards your spine. Good, right there. So you find that nice deep core engagement here, maintaining neutral pelvis lying on your belly. Not so bad, huh? So while we're lying down, let's have you lie onto your side. So I'm going to turn onto my right hand side. I'm going to take my hand, lay it all the way down onto the mat, and my head just rests on the arm here. Now, lying on our side like this here, you'll probably hear me cue you to find a mouse house or lift your waist off of the floor. So right here, it doesn't have to be a big, massive lift. All I'm trying to get you to do is to pull the lower abdominals tight. So you're toning through your core, all right? And stack your hips properly. So right here, if you disconnect, so this is a lot of times where we'll be doing our leg work here or hip work. If you disconnect your core, you're going to hike this top hip up towards your rib cage. You're going to be working in a position that's not neutral, that you don't want to work your hips out. Another cool cue, you'll notice the top leg gets shorter than the bottom leg. If you see that or observe that in your practice, you know you're not in the right position. So all you do is just reach it out until your legs are even length, and you'll feel that tone happen naturally underneath here. Now you are in a stacked pelvis, and we can do all sorts of exciting exercises here. So that's neutral from side lying. Okay, so finding a neutral pelvic alignment while seated. Right here, I want you just to tune into what you're sitting on. So we call those little bony parts of your behind your sits bones, right here. And there's a little bit of more mental imagery involved with this one here. You can tune into where your ASIS or your PSIS is, the little dimples on the back side of your body. Ideally, those are parallel with each other and parallel to the floor. So if you happen to roll back and tuck your tail, flatten your back, now your hip bones in the front, your ASIS are actually sitting a little bit higher than your PSIS is right here, right? That's flat back. We're over engaged in our belly, overstretched in our lower back muscles. Now the opposite, when we overarch our back and spill your hips forward, our PSIS is going to sit higher than your ASIS right here in the front. That's going to be over tightening your back muscles and disengaging the core a little bit in the front, right? So neutral is an even balance of the two, right? So go ahead and take your hands and just place them on your hips right here. So I don't want you to lose any height of your spine when we do this. So I don't want you to slouch and arch like that. You want to stay lifted like you're balancing a cup of tea on the crown of your head. Now I want you to pelvic tuck. So you're going to roll off your sits bones towards your tailbone. So you've rolled your hips back. That's a pelvic tuck right there. Now inhale, come back up on top of those sits bones. Now spill your hips forward, arch your lower back and roll forward. And then come back to neutral, sitting on those sits bones. Let's do that one more time. Pelvic tuck, tuck your tail, roll the hips back, but don't drop your chest. Keep the chest lifted here. Now come back up to those sits bones, grow a little bit taller. This time spill your hips forward, arching your back, and then come right back in the middle. So you feel balanced on top of those sits bones. Your hips are parallel to the floor. You have nice, even engagement in the core muscles in the front as your back, and you should feel like you're sitting very tall right here. That is a seated neutral alignment right there. Very important if we do any leg work here. We want to make sure your pelvis is in that correct position. And let's move on to finding neutral in standing. So, okay, neutral from our standing position is very similar to seated. We're just on our feet rather than our behind. So I'll stand to the side right here. Again, it's all about finding that balance from your front hip bones to your back hip bones, your PSIS, right? So put your hands on your hips again. We're going to do that same action that we did from seated. So we're going to allow your lower back to arch. So you're spilling your hips forward here. So you feel how tight you are in your lower back. You feel how disengaged you are from your core musculature in the front. Now let's reverse that. Pelvic tuck. Hold those abs in and up in the front. Tuck your tailbone down in between your legs right here. Feel the over recruitment of your abs here, your lower back lengthening, and then find that middle ground of the two. So we have that nice, even balanced position from your ASIS and your PSIS, or I like to think of treating my pelvis like a little bowl of soup. Don't let it spill forward. Don't spill it back. Find it just right in the middle of the two here. See, nothing to it. So that is neutral pelvis from our lying on our back, on our belly, side lying, seated, and standing. So again, you'll hear me cue you at various times in your practice to find neutral. So I hope this tutorial has been a little more helpful at explaining how to find that. And again, the why we want to find that in the first place is because we're recruiting our abdominal strength and our core stabilizers to move safely and effectively through our movement right there. You can kind of think of this like weightlifters who wear those big heavy weightlifting belts. We're doing this, but with our muscles inside of our body, right? All right, well, thank you for joining me. I hope to see you on the mat soon.